Hello and welcome to Hallelujah Monkeyz for September 4th. My name is Dillon Flynn.
My name is Trevor Ickrath. Dillon, welcome to Season 4 of Hallelujah Monkeyz.
Holy crap. You know how, sometimes when a show's doing really good, they'll double its running time for the season premiere?
Yeah, I don't think we have enough, foresight to plan out a 12-episode arc, though.
No, unfortunately. But apparently our ratings must be good, because this is I've heard of monster trucks, Trevor. But monster episodes of Hallelujah Monkeyz?
Is this one going to end up being a little long?
I think so. We got a whole lot to get to today.
I mean, on short notice, too. I don't think we were planning on this being a kind of big episode, but I guess we'll see where it goes.
It's sort of the inverse of last week's episode, where we were expecting to interview a person and review an album, and then the album didn't come out. And this time we were just expecting to review an album, and hey, what do you know?
It's funny how the universe and gorillas works like that, isn't it?
It sure is. It's good to read into these things and build belief systems around them.
Absolutely. That's the only kind of sense of purpose I get from life.
Oh, hey, the energies in this room are telling me that we should probably talk about the news.
Let's better obey them. Who knows what would happen if we didn't.
It's all good news now.
Trevor Ickrath, are you aware that this is the Gorillaz remix mini season that we're embarking on right now?
We do have a lot of remixes to listen to in the next couple of weeks, don't we?
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't like thinking about that.
We're doing it's like a themed trio of episodes, and so I thought it'd be fitting for us to talk about the worst remix of Phase 4.
You think so?
Yeah, I absolutely
You really think so? Well, first of all, we should clarify we're talking about the Yato remix of Busted in Blue, right?
Yeah, Yato, YOTTO remix.
Busted in Blue, your favorite song on Humans, and I think your favorite song of the year. Was it your number one Gorillaz song of all time?
It's my number one Gorillaz song of all time.
So you obviously feel a little slighted here.
I feel look, there's a really competently put together remix of Busted in Blue on that Log S album, and that to me proved that it can be done. You can do something with that song that's interesting and unexpected. But oh my God! So first of all, why does this exist? This isn't a single. Why did this happen?
Maybe Damon just wants more people to listen to his voice.
The question is, if it's not from label fuckery, if it's not Warner saying we need some hot Busted in Blue remixes, then that means that this Yato guy literally reached out and said, "You guys, I have a vision for this song, Busted in Blue. You gotta give me those stems. Give me those Busted in Blue stems, because I'm gonna make a hit."
Obviously, they were convinced too.
It's awful. I mean, it's not quite Wise Guys level awful, but it's close. It's so four on the floor, it goes nowhere, and then you just got
it just feels pointless. Yeah,
you've got these little snippets of Damon and Kalila from the song sort of coming in, and it's not like they even did anything to match the key of those vocal arrangements. So
yeah.
Why does this exist?
Yato, if you're listening, come on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on the Nuremberg Trials episode where we very pointedly demand answers about this remix.
Do you think we'd be able to get the Red Bull CEO on that episode too?
Oh, I hope so. If he's gonna sit down with anybody and tell the truth, I think it'll be us, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so this is kind of awesome, actually, Trevor. 6 years in the making. So this fella named Richard Van Az has been working on a fan video for Rhinestone Eyes based on Jamie Hewlett's animatic for the song for 6 years.
I remember when this first started, when the project first started, I was like, okay, let's see where this goes.
Well, and it finally released. That's the news this week. And I gotta say, it's really an undertaking, because this is just one dude who's not getting paid, working on this for years and years in his spare time, and he realized the whole animatic beginning to end.
Yeah, you can tell that a lot of effort and a lot of love went into this thing, because it is really impressive.
Do you think that he had any Gorillaz Dark Nights of the Soul in the middle of the production where he's like, I don't like this fucking cartoon band anymore, and then he'd go through the cycle and come back and say, okay, let's finish what we started, Richard.
I mean, if it was anything like the process of making this show, then I imagine.
But I figure, Trevor, because this is probably the most fully realized version of that video we'll ever see. Why not give Richard the full Hallelujah Monkeyz music video review treatment?
Sure. Come up with like a one-sentence summary of his work.
Yeah, I've just faded up the video audio underneath us, and we're going to treat it like a proper Gorillaz video. So I believe it's you're up for summary.
Mine is, I can't believe a fan-made Gorillaz video has more animation in it than an official one by Jamie Hewlett. Because it does, right? There's more animation in this than like at least on Melancholy Hill, I'm pretty sure.
And that's the difference between working for passion and working for commerce.
And I guess like having 7 years or whatever to work on something too.
What's that triangle? You can get it done. You can get it done fast and well, but it won't be cheap. You can get it done fast and cheap, but it won't be good. And you can get it done good and cheap, but it won't be fast. And this is an example of the third one.
We'll have to explain that to Jamie when we get him on the show.
Let's do some best and worst. To me, the best thing about this video, Trevor, was that seeing it in motion helped me understand kind of the plot of this video much better than the animatic ever did. Like,
really?
Yeah, for example, like it never really occurred to me that whole Four Horsemen sequence where Murdoch shakes hands with the boogeyman, like it didn't occur to me that was an allusion to Murdoch being this immortal being from like the ancient, like I didn't realize that was a flashback until I kind of saw it staged in motion, you know?
God, I wish we had figured out what all that stuff was about.
It would have been nice, but I feel like even though it's still vanishing, the closer I get to it, I still feel like I wiped a couple of smudges off of the opaque lens into the Phase 3 lore by watching this video.
Yeah, thanks for that, Richard.
Another best is definitely that amazing shot of Cyborg Noodle who's like crying robot blood and smiling like a psychopath. That's such a good shot.
Staring off with like Pasta Noosa, which one is that?
Yeah, it's like Paz and Glenn Dillon.
My favorite part, though, is when the boogeyman raises his arms and summons the Gorillaz live band, and we get to see like Damon and Cass and the rest of the boys. That's really good.
That's amazing, and I love how the boogeyman's like flesh peels away from his body, and you just see his ribs underneath it. So cool.
Yeah.
But the worst part, I mean, where are the sound effects? I feel gypped, Trevor. Where are these?
I mean, it's the attention to detail like that could have taken this video from being like, you know. It's great, don't get me wrong, but that's what it needed to take it to the next level. That's what it needed to get the like Hewlett sense to it.
I want to hear some bellowing wails. I want to hear
machine gun fire. Come on, there's a whole explosion in there.
What's Paz the News going like? That robot's messed up, you know? Throw. No, but seriously, most of the weaknesses in this video are I think weaknesses of Jamie Hewlett's vision rather than of Richard's work. Like it still has the El Mañana on Melancholy Hill issue of like no thought going into timing out the beats of the video to the music, you know?
I actually think it works pretty well. Rhinestone and Liz has kind of like a sinister atmosphere that I think lends itself pretty well to this kind of like final showdown.
It still just feels a little bit like another episode of the Gorillaz show that's incidentally set to a song from Plastic Beach to me. I don't know.
I think this one is just, I think it's a case of this incidentally being a little bit of a better incident than the On Melancholy Hill one.
I would definitely put it a notch above On Melancholy Hill, and also a notch above certainly Donkomatic if we're talking Phase 3 videos. Definitely better.
For sure.
The only I don't mean to ride Richard. He did this for free and he did a beautiful job. But there is one moment where Murdoch dives down some stairs to get away from an explosion, and it does look kind of janky. Like it looks sort of like when Space Ghost would you know, shoot Zorak and he'd fly out of a window or something.
The explosion itself, though, looks really good.
The explosion
That's a cool
sequence.
Awesome. I mean, I bought it, yeah.
It's very kinetic. There's some cool little touches, too, Trevor. Did you notice that there's in 2D's dungeon at the bottom of the Plastic Beach island, there's a poster in the background that says peppermint tea on it, which I thought was funny.
Oh, very funny, very cute.
And he's got that little photo of him and Paula Cracker on the wall. So.
Little photo of Paula Cracker.
Little dungeon photo of Paula Cracker.
Little Paula Cracker photo.
Like, what a treat. I kind of had forgotten this was coming, and so I was excited to see it again.
Yeah, me too. I had no idea it was still in the works, but I mean, again, really well done job.
Probably the most like fun little Gorillaz tidbit of the week. Although I will jump in real quick and say the Best Dressed Award I got to give it to Paz Denuse in this. He's wearing like a lilac-colored button-up. He's got a little pocket square in that. He's wearing some navy blue Dickies. He's got his little granny glasses on. It's like a good, clean look, you know?
All right, I think it'd probably be either a tie between Murdoch's kind of like Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse sequence, kind of Western getup.
That's a great look.
Everybody in the live band is dressed great.
They've got kind of like, almost Steve Zissou level, like lounging sailor outfits.
Yes. So one more piece of news this week, right?
Yeah, I kind of lied. I said that this was the most exciting Gorillaz tidbit of the week, but this is kind of amazing, actually.
Yeah, this is definitely the most interesting curiosity we've dug up.
Boy, it's like such a weird, convoluted chain of events that lead to this. I'm not even exactly sure how to start here, Trevor.
Okay, so we talked to Kerry Levy, the director of the Gorillaz documentary Bananas, last week.
Yes.
And he told us that there was a brief period where they were considering auditioning other singers to play the role of 2D, to do the vocals on the album.
Right. We were like, what? Because we just never heard about that.
Yeah, we didn't really get any names, but I guess the popular Instagram account, Gorillaz Trivia, was listening.
Yeah, run by I know a listener of the show and a friend of ours, Jordan Powers, runs that Instagram account.
Very cool. So he made a post that said, like, at one point they were auditioning singers for 2D, and Matt Wakeham, who is that?
Matt Wakeham was the writer and director of Charts of Darkness, and I think he was also just like an early Zombie Flesh Eaters guy. I think he actually was involved with kind of fleshing out the Gorillaz characters really early on.
Okay, so Matt Wakeman commented on that post saying, "Totally true. Earl Zinger, aka Rob Gallagher, was a contender before the decision was made. No one other than Damon could deliver it." That
is crazy. Okay, so I didn't know about Rob Gallagher. Apparently, if you're like an acid jazz person, especially like a UK acid jazz person, Rob Gallagher is your dude. He's an established man in the niche world of acid jazz music. So he was in a band called Galliano. They had like a minor hit called the Prince of Peace. In fact, when he was in that band, he billed himself as Robert Galliano. When he quit that band, he billed himself as Earl Zinger. So he's very into the nom de plume.
Yeah, definitely a kind of character actor almost.
Yeah, and so I wanted to play a little bit of that Prince of Peace since this is big hit, but he only kind of raps in that song, and I thought instead we should probably play something that would give them an idea of sort of the timbre of his voice. So Let's bring up a little bit. This is Learning to Fly. This is from his first solo record. Let's play a snippet of that.
Minicabs are always late. They don't stop over the estate. Well, you go across the bridge and then hear me call. I'll be by the river, y'all see the tide ain't gonna rise, just me. I'm gonna float above a chimney. I'm gonna start a can of farm for you tonight. When everything's right, I'm learning to fly.
It's definitely kind of got like a smokier, jazzier vibe.
Weird.
I guess Gorillaz would shape up to be. Yeah, like what kind of character do you think they would have written around this voice? Because it doesn't seem like it would have been the 2D that we got.
Yeah, were we still looking at those sketches? Like I almost feel like. Boy, could you imagine like if his speaking voice was still Nelson DeFritos and he sang like that?
That would be pretty funny.
But you know, the thing that was kind of surprising to me is that like, why this guy? Like he's obviously like a cool kind of, he's like a tastemaker type of guy, but I don't necessarily get the sense that he has this like very rich, distinct voice, you know? I
mean, maybe they were thinking of going somewhere else with the project at this point. Who knows?
Maybe. The mind reels though. Like I wonder, were they looking at those 2D sketches when they started looking into Rob Gallagher? I wonder if there exists somewhere like on Damon's little 4-track him singing the Clint Eastwood hook or something. That'd be fascinating to hear.
Oh man, that would be like the holy grail, wouldn't it?
For sure. In the secret warehouse where all of the forbidden Gorillaz treasures exist, that one's like behind glass, you know.
Yeah. So Dillon, I think that's the news for the week. Do you want to take a seat at the round table and talk about Spacemonkeyz?
Yeah, let's talk about Spacemonkeyz. This is crazy. I had no idea what this episode was going to be like.
I know it's going to be a wild ride, so let's get into it.
Feel the feeling inside each individual brings. With bionic eyes, I see invisible things. From beginning to end, we can fit in between. The band from the land with digital dreams.
So, Dillon, it is season 4 of Howling Monkeyz, and in season 4, we are going to be kind of rounding up a lot of odds and ends, remixes, stuff like that. The first of which is going to be the band's kind of officially sanctioned 2001 dub remix album of the first Gorillaz LP by the Spacemonkeyz, Laika Come Home.
Yeah, this is kind of a major Gorillaz release. Like, I especially remember in the waning days of Phase 1.5, you know, always wandering idly past the Gorillaz section in my local record store and seeing a copy of
It would always be there. Yeah, it would always be there.
It would always be there. It was so omnipresent and such a major release, and a little bit of a head scratcher at the time too. Like, I was pretty young and didn't know a whole lot about how the music industry works, but even then I thought, this is weird that this genre exercise remix of a full album that I already own exists. Is this a normal thing?
I had no idea what it was when I picked it up.
It's a very interesting singular entry in the Gorillaz discography.
And I think a lot of fans who are even familiar with it kind of only have like a real vague idea of what it was really or how it worked. I mean, I know that you and I weren't totally sure about like all the specificities of the project, were we?
No, and that's why I started reaching out over the week to 3 of the Monkeyz themselves, to Gava and Desire and Dubversive, just
right, all those characters we read about in Rise of the Ogre.
Just making some Hail Mary passes, figuring, well, it'd be nice to get a little bit of original research on this, never expecting that we would hear back from any of them.
No, but we are significantly more enlightened about the project, though, because this morning at 5 a.m., we had the pleasure of talking to Dubversive of the Spacemonkeyz.
Amazing! Dubversive himself. Dubversive, the Hear No Evil Space Monkey, Skyped right into the show and talked to us all about Laika Come Home. There's so much to learn, Trevor.
Right, we were able to dig some interesting tidbits out of this.
So what do you say? Should we turn it over to Richie and see what he has to say about Laika Come Home?
Yeah, let's before we talk about the album, let's talk to Richie.
Richie, thanks so much for coming on Hallelujah Monkeyz. We're so excited to be talking to you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the program.
No problem.
We were chatting together yesterday on Skype. You mentioned you're working on something with George Clinton right now. Is that true?
Yeah, and a fellow space monkey, Darren DJ Desire Gallagher, is involved in that too.
Oh, wow.
Smudge All-Stars, which is my way of gathering together some people I've worked with over the years, including Pee Wee Ellis, Fred Wesley, Omar from here, Dennis Bovell, George Clinton, and he dropped this beautiful vocal on a track for me. So that's in the making, as is a new Spacemonkeyz EP, I might add.
Are you kidding me? What?
Whoa, what?
Breaking news.
Yeah, so we're trying to do an umbrella label for this funk project and a kind of neo-dub, we call it, Spacemonkeyz project as well, which coordinating the two things together, me and DJ Desire.
That's exciting. Is that going to be Gorillaz affiliated or just Spacemonkeyz off on their own doing Spacemonkeyz stuff?
I think it'd probably be independent. We're just going to try and get a label. We're sort of modelling ourselves on Ninja Tunes, where you go to a label because you know the label's always interesting. And by label, I mean a Spotify page and a YouTube channel and all the usual stuff, and just put great music in it from our various projects, you know, the cool stuff, as I said earlier, you know.
Where do we watch for activity on that front? Because a lot of people listening would be very excited to hear that.
I'll keep you informed. It's all in development. We're still at the music stage, so we're talking to various people to coordinate this as a label. So I reckon I'll have something more definite by the later autumn, new year, and I'll let you know now that I've got contact detail for you.
Holy shit, Trevor, new Spacemonkeyz.
It's wild. That's the news we get right off the bat.
I know, right?
And of course, I'll send you exclusive mixes immediately.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Here's something that I've kind of noticed is that we all kind of have a hazy picture of Spacemonkeyz, how it worked, how it came back.
Yeah.
But I want to clarify a few things so that we understand the timeline of events, okay?
Okay.
So the official party line is that Darren remixed Tomorrow Comes Today for Damon. Damon said, why don't you do this to the whole album? Then he hooks up with you. Is this all correct so far?
It's almost. He did a remix of 2000. He did Jungle Fresh, not Tomorrow Comes Today. So he'd done that. He'd done that with his fellow cohort from Jamiroquai, which is Gavin Dodds. So Darren then becomes part of Gorillaz. Me and Darren have worked for years. I mean, since he was about 16, he was kind of my little talented DJ guy who had the street sensibility, if you like. And
Everyone needs one of those.
I actually got him over to work with George Clinton when he was 17 in Detroit. And this is 1987, right? And from then on, as Darren did his stuff, Jamiroquai Gorillaz, he would call me, if there was a big remix gig came up, and I'd get involved. So Darren and Gavin did 2000 into Jungle Fresh. Played it to Damon. He said, great, do the whole album. Darren then called me, so I became the third part of this group. The first thing we did, me and Darren, was go to Ronnie Wood's house. He was going out with Leia Woods, the daughter of Ronnie. He had a setup at the house, and we did Star Child.
Dub Space 9 or Dub 09 or however you want to call it.
Yeah. So that was the first one that I got involved with. So we did that. And then we started to sort of program up ideas. In fact, I got on with Tomorrow Comes Today at home then. Then we got a box full of all the multi-tracks from Damon. And that was like the green light, right, here we go. And what we did was we went to a residential studio for 3 months. It was a serious extravaganza. I mean, it was a real roll your sleeves up, go in, come out the other side, and that's how it got done.
What was the workflow like between the three of you? How did you divide duties between the three of you?
It was actually very, very egalitarian. We would sort of, burn out, do a 3-hour stretch on some kind of detail. What it came down to, I mean, we all know our reggae, being Londoners. I've got a long history of working in reggae. Between us, we could cover all the instruments except brass, pretty much, which was all done by Mike Smith, also a long-term associate of Damon Albarn.
Yeah, still actively involved with the Gorillaz project.
Still in the mix, yeah, and he did all the brass arrangements. We got a percussionist called Jeff Scanterbury. We had various vocal guests, as you know, Hugh Brown, L16, and a few others. But in terms of putting it together musically, Darren, being a DJ, was the real arbiter of taste to give it a kind of a modern edge. I was kind of like a one-man rhythm section with a few bass players added in, Stuart Zender, etc. And Gavin was the melodic side of things, being a guitarist. And so we were in a studio with a kit set up, a Hammond organ, an upright piano, synth stuff, and we lived there. And it just evolved, really. It was a wonderful experience. I mean, there was some serious meltdowns as well, and some pretty edgy moments, as you can imagine, over that sort of period of time.
Oh, I gotta follow up on that. Can you remember any moment where it all came to a head?
Oh, well, yeah, what can I say? I mean, me and Darren are both Leos, and we would have flashpoints, moments of disagreement about one thing or the other. And but we'd get over it and sort of move on, and it was an amazing experience. We were all very proud of that record.
Can't make a good record if you don't care about it. So that's just a symptom of caring.
Can't make a dub remix album without breaking a few eggs.
That's true.
No, exactly. And also, to be honest, if you do seriously care about something, you're going to have passionate disagreements, artistically, which can get a little personal, but we're all big, old and ugly enough to kind of move on and bury the hatchet. So we got through it, and we're still friends. So, yeah, as I say, we're all very proud of it as a piece. Actually, sorry, I've missed one part of the story out, which is very interesting. The very first thing we did was go to Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics house in the south of France, in Cannes, with Stuart Zender, and did a bunch of stuff there.
Right, Zender also a Jamiroquai guy, right?
He's also a Jamiroquai guy, yeah. So he's very big friends with Darren, and they packed the car up with the recording studio, drove out to Dave Stewart's splendid house with the pool and all that in South France. I popped over. We got a few grooves going down there, like Man Mission, is it? Or
Man Research?
Man Research, thank you. Sorry, I'm showing. It's been a few years. Yeah, we did that groove down there. A couple of them we sort of developed down at his place. And that was the very initial thing after the little Ronnie Wood session. And by that point, we then booked this residential long session. I mean, it's not that far from London, so you could sort of pop home every now and again. It wasn't, in the middle of the woods, nowhere. To all intents and purposes, it's such a big job to do, to take, what arguably at that time was like the hottest album on the planet and remix it, it was no mean feat.
Big responsibility.
Yeah, it was.
In some ways, it's a constraint. When you're just remixing a song, you pick a song you like. When you have to remix an album, it doesn't matter what you think about the songs. You've got to remix them anyway, Absolutely. And that, remixing an album is quite an unusual thing to do. It's just, I haven't done one. Well, no, I did do a kind of similar sort of thing, but not something with that kind of profile, where everyone knew the melodies and so on and so forth. One of the things that we did do was really not lean on the classically commercially known melody. So if we were going to tackle, say, I got sunshine in a bag, blah, 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 we wouldn't use that melody hardly at all. Smartly. Find your own hooks.
Well, that I have to say was Darren's direction. I'd say, what are you talking about? That's what the bit everyone knows is go exactly. So we won't use that bit.
The arbiter of taste.
There are really only, I think 2 tracks or maybe 3 that kind of follow the traditional structure of the songs. All the other ones are kind of just more nebulous explorations of the stuff.
That's right, yeah. They're the kind of homage,
Yes.
rather than direct remix. And I've got to say, one of my favourite remixes ever is the one that was done of what we called Fistful of Peanuts.
Right, the Clint Eastwood mix.
The Clint Eastwood mix by that garage guy, which was just incredible, a great remix. And so, again, there were certain remixes out there that were really kicking. That, again, we didn't want to crawl up their posterior with a repetition and also don't forget what a classic remix is. Take the hook, do a new groove, and there's your remix. So
right.
But this was like, no, avoid the hook, completely rewrite it and then just put a little snippet in so you go, oh my god, it's that track.
It had to hang together as an album. If it had just been, it would have turned into a novelty record, really, if it had just been, here's all of the songs you already know with reggae grooves behind it.
Yeah, and it does feel a lot more like a lot more than a novelty record.
For sure.
And also, don't forget, you've got the G-Sides compilation of all the remixes for various people. So that wasn't that kind of project. It was something slightly different. So we embraced it in that regard, and stretched ourselves creatively, which was lovely,
So one of the most interesting things to me about Laika is you have Terry Hall of the Specials doing some vocals on there, who's one of the most influential acts on the first album. How was he brought into the project?
Brought in? Well, I think that was down to Damon, because he is a great admirer of the Specials, and I remember we did a Radio 1 session, and he basically described him as like the best yob voice on the planet. Yob in UK parlance means it's boy backwards, right? Yob. A yob is like a skinhead, delinquent teenager, really.
Right, yeah.
It's just something about his presence is very. He comes from a part of the UK called Coventry, which is got heavily bombed in the war, so it's a little bit of a disillusioned part of the UK, and it spawned two-tone.
Right, the 80s ska movement.
Yeah, it uniquely came from this town in Coventry through the likes of Joey Dammers and Terry Hall. So him having him on that record was quite significant, and and then getting him to do M1A1 on the Spacemonkeyz album was all Damon's.
He's so playful. He's so fun. It's such a fun performance. I love when he name drops the Spacemonkeyz.
Yeah, that's a great note to go out on.
And the vocal delivery is, to put it mildly, it's kind of nonchalant. It's disaffected. It's the youth. Do you know the Specials?
Yes, of course.
Love the Specials, yeah.
So, you've done too much too young. You're married with a kid. You should be having fun with me, etc., etc., etc. He's the voice of the disaffected youth of the UK. And as I say, in the radio session, I said to Damon, I said, come on, why don't we all go in and sing M1A1, He went, no, because Terry's, he's the yob voice of doom, you just get him double tracked.
The yob voice of doom.
Yeah.
That beats his previous nickname, "Don't Call Me Scarface" by Country
Yeah,
Mile.
that's how they refer to him in the first Gorillaz documentary,
Very funny.
Charts of Darkness.
Yeah, Voice of Doom. I think that's better. So then you mentioned Hugh Brown and Earl 16. Both of those guys have a pretty incredible pedigree in the sort of dance hall and reggae worlds.
Well, this is kind of where I came into it. I've got a very long history of association with British reggae. Through Dennis Blackbeard Bovell, and the dub band, which I joined when I was very, very young as a drummer. That is kind of my core instrument. So I was this strange little white kid from London who was banging to roots reggae and got into a roots reggae band. Then made an album with Linton Kwesi Johnson, and then over the years got to know a few reggae luminaries. And then when it came to getting some new guests for the Spacemonkeyz, I could call on a couple of good friends, Earl 16 being one and Hugh Brown being the other one. And we were going to use Horace Andy, but we couldn't quite coordinate it. I went to see him, so that was unfortunately one that got away. But I'd been working with Horace, I'd been working with Earl and Hugh Brown independently on different projects around that time. So when this came up, it was like, right, let's get these guys, and Hugh Brown was incredible because that track, that break that he toasts over is 7 bars long,
And he vamps over the whole thing. It's so great.
No, mate, he was standing in the doorway. The groove is on. He starts to toast, as we call it. And it's like, oh, that's perfect, right, get him a microphone. And not only did he drop a great lyric on it, but he actually got those breaks in the an awkward amount of time that they are. They're not 8 bars long, they're 7 bars long, which is really tricky. And he just nailed it. And to this day, I found that quite extraordinary.
It's so beautiful. That moment when that break resolves into that big major chord is like one of the prettiest moments on the whole record, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So Richie, 3 songs from the original album don't appear on Laika. There's Double Bass, Rock the House, and Latin Simone. Were attempts ever made on those tracks to kind of give them the Spacemonkeyz treatment?
No, we limited ourselves to, it was a feasibility study. They've done Jungle Fresh. I ended up playing drums in it and we put brass on it. Then we went straight for the obvious ones. Tomorrow Comes the Day, La 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 La. So they were the ones that you were definitely going to do. Then there were the kind of sort of more Gorillaz album tracks as well as our album tracks, by virtue of the fact that they're a little bit more esoteric. And then if you think of something like Punked, turning that into reggae is quite an undertaking. So I think there was only so many of those that we wanted to tackle just for feasibility.
Right.
Because you listen to it and you think, you know what, where are we going to go with this? It's too complicated. Like Latin into funk could be very cheesy.
Right.
If you're not careful.
Yeah, and I can see why Rock the House didn't get translated as well then.
Yeah, we wanted to keep it dark as well, the record,
Maybe breezy, but nighttime vibes,
Yeah, very, very sort of, down home, dim the lights.
Okay, I'm gonna get granular with you, man. I got some real nerd questions for you here.
Good, I love those.
I was pouring through the liner notes. I got a couple of names I want to run by you. So, Jungle Fresh mentions a castanets player named Jack Schythe. No information about him.
Oh yes.
I feel like that must be a pseudonym. Is that a real guy or a pseudonym?
Yes. It's a joke. It's Jack Shite. It was our little gag, yeah. I think
Uh-huh.
we find there might be a couple of those.
I think I found a second one too. Brian Piss for the strings on Crooked
yes.
Dub.
Shit and piss.
Yeah. Absolute bullshit.
Who's actually responsible for those castanets on Jungle Fresh?
Probably me, I'm guessing.
Nice, you're Jack Shite. That's another one of your AKAs.
Jack Shite. What was the one, Brian?
Brian Piss.
Brian Piss.
For
Brian Piss, yes.
strings
yes.
on Crooked Dub. Pretty good.
Yeah, Darren's idea, that one.
And then here's another weird one. What about so Pete Collis? He co-engineered, I believe, every track on the album.
Right.
And on the song Depunked, he's said to have played an incendiary device.
Right.
I'm wondering if there's a story behind that. I imagine that he sparked up a bong or something.
I'm guessing Pete Collis was the engineer on the original album. So in other words, because we used some of the audio from the original, we'd credit him. I think you'll find there's a big explosion at the end of it.
Oh, yes, of course.
That's the incendiary device, I guess.
I think, again, we probably just added that as a bit of, just to boost up the fiction, of the monkeys and the dog and flying out to space and interrupting with the frequencies and all that whole, because of the cartoon nature of it, to just embellish reality a little. So I think that's where incendiary device, Brian Piss and Jack Shite came from.
To have a bit of fun with it in universe, right?
Yeah. Speaking of in universe, Richie, I have a question. I'm not going to hold it against you if the answer is no, but have you read the in universe biography of Gorillas, Rise of the Ogre?
Yeah, I've got the book.
So are you aware that there's a full page devoted to fictional in universe information about the Spacemonkeyz?
Yes, I am. There's a little 2-page spread, yes. And I've read my biography regarding Natalie and Imbruglia, and I can tell you it's all true. What can I say? Yeah, it's great. It's lovely to be in the book. Lovely to be part of the history of the whole
Well, in
thing.
that case, maybe you can true or false us on a few details from your fictional dossier and tell us what's truth and what's fiction.
Okay, go on then.
Dubversive, that's you.
That's me.
You're the Hear No Evil monkey, and you're a big fan of red wine?
That's an allusion to my previous incarnation as a very heavy drinker.
Oh, sure.
Which I'm not anymore.
Good for you. Congratulations.
I was known to enjoy rather too much alcohol back in the day, yeah. So that was their gentle way of dropping that little bombshell, yeah.
I believe they also said that you're overly fond of absinthe. That's some serious drinking.
Well, no, I was, because I used to have a bottle of absinthe on my shelf while I was making that record. So that the home part of it, so you've got quite a big setup at home and you're doing the programming aspect. But I hate to admit, have a bottle of absinthe on the shelf and I just swig from the bottle, I used to think that, to get things really out there, you had to go out there. And me and George Clinton spoke about this, and he's sobered up as well, bless him. And we did a session a few years ago, and we both agreed, you try and find this thing down the end of whatever substances you choose. And in the end, it's good for research, but there comes a point when it's not a good look, and you kind of know what you need to know to be psychedelic, trippy, whatever you want to say. What it comes down to, I'm getting a little bit moralistic here for the kids, but it's actually all about skills and musicianship and all of that. It's not really about how far out you can push your noodle, if you know what I mean.
Right, that's maybe less than 1% of the process. And like you said,
well, you know what it's like. You hear a lot of mythology about, say, reggae done by people completely stoned out of their minds. It's not true. To play that well, you have to be sharp.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the truth of that. But yeah, the red wine mention was just a little dig in the ribs from my friend.
And the book also mentions that you're fond of TV reruns, particularly T.J. Hooker.
I'm a bit of a Trekkie.
Really?
Oh, that's awesome.
T.J. Hooker, I've got to say.
What do you think? Original series or Next Generation?
I mean, nothing at all after the original series. I mean, I'm a child of the '60s, so
sure.
Those sort of Technicolor crazy programs back in the day appealed to me.
City on the Edge of Tomorrow. It's like one of the best teleplays ever written.
Dad, let me tell you that I have embarked upon another project where we went and I found a website which had a synopsis of all the original Star Trek plot lines, and we were planning to write a tune on each one for a outer space funk album. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there a lot of thought went into those things, you know.
Well, I wanted to ask, did you ever find that was the Gorillaz camp super hands on during the production of Laika, or were you kind of left to your own devices?
No, we were really left to it. I think Darren had done such a good job of the first one that Damon was literally like, just get on with it, mate, you know. So we did literally get on with it and book our own time here, there, and we just got up to it. There was no real schedule on it. We weren't, you know, due for any particular release date. And we coordinate quite a lot with Jamie and everyone at Zombie Flesh Eaters, who they're all local. Damon's place is in West London, Darren's living in West London, and Zombie Flesh Eaters was in West London. So we sort of, once the thing was ready, we were in and out, grabbing big boxes of T-shirts and looking at the little videos. I mean, the artwork was absolutely fantastic. I mean, unbelievably great job on the cover and everything. So largely left to our own sort of thing as a satellite project. We did do a Radio 1 session with Damon there, and L16 there.
You know, I remember that session from back in the day. I looked high and low for it this week and I couldn't find it.
Well, I've actually got that somewhere. If we get in communication with email, I can get you a copy of that.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
That'd be great. Wow.
Yeah, and we sort of hung out because their management was in the same building as Zombie Flesh Eaters, which was round the corner from Buff Space. So it was all local in West London. So we sort of mill about a little bit, you know. And funnily enough, Natalie Imbruglia was in that building. That's what she came into the picture. We were in the bar with Damon one afternoon and Jamie, and Natalie Imbruglia was on the next table. I must have said something, made a rod for my own back. So when the fiction was created, that was in there.
Right.
It's kind of like that, you know, be careful what you say.
Yeah. So Damon's talked in some interviews about the Spacemonkeyz were originally planning to do a follow-up remix album of Demon Days, but that never materialized. Can you tell us anything about it? Like maybe how far you got?
Yeah, so basically by the time we get to Demon Days and, you know, Spacemonkeyz has done what it's doing and the first album's done what it had done, which was incredible business. As Demon Days is looming, by this point, Darren is a remix team with Stuart Zender called Chopper. And they're doing one track off Demon Days, which is Dirty Harry. I get called, can you come in, you know, give us your, you know, once over on this mix. So I go into Buff Space and we do that mix that you've heard as Chopper. Now, if you look at the credits on the Chopper mix, it will say Dubversive on it.
That's you.
Yeah. So basically, it's not a Spacemonkeyz remix, even though it's got two Spacemonkeyz on it.
That's interesting, right?
Yeah. So I don't know what the logistics of, maybe it was just deemed too complicated to do another whole album remix under one umbrella title. But I think we'd sort of stepped in, gone, here's another one of ours, slightly different lineup, Stuart Zender, me and Darren. It's sometimes what you do is you have these brilliant ideas and in the end you sort of kind of muddy the water a little bit and it gets a bit confusing, you know, because you're throwing names around. But to cut a long story short, that's what we did on the second record, and then it didn't go further than that for reasons unknown. I don't know.
Was there talk, though, at the time about where you might take it if it had continued?
Well, what we were hoping, actually, was to do a completely independent record. We were sort of neck and neck with Roots Maneuver in the press over here. So our plan was to actually do a complete original album as ourselves. And for one reason or another, probably people get busy. Actually, Gavin, in case you don't know, he lives in Australia. So, you know, that makes things a little tricky.
Right.
As I say, we're doing that now. You know, we've been jamming and doing little ideas down the road. We did a remix for Plan B that didn't get used, but it's a great groove that's been sitting there for ages that we are always meaning to get vocal. So we're just planning on a few amazing guests on some of our jams with view to doing an umbrella label for this funk project and a new Spacemonkeyz original project. I know it's ridiculous, it's taken God knows how many years, but life gets in the way and busy doing other stuff, all three of us.
That's so exciting, though. That's so exciting.
It's really exciting. Yeah.
I mean, you've got to realize as well is that, a remix project by its very nature is reworking someone else's stuff. So it's not your whole, raison d'etre. It's something you do as a kind of, lending your interpretation to someone else's work. So actually doing the completely original project is a longer term process to develop, and I would say, Darren had 2 kids in the meantime, and so we've all been busy doing one thing and another. But I think we're on the cusp of having a few little gems now, pretty ready. We've got someone who looks like they'll coordinate it. We've got this funk project, which I'm really, really happy with. This kind of my baby, if you like. And we're always involved in each other's music. So fingers crossed, I think we're close to having a little foray again.
All right.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of cool stuff on the horizon.
Spacemonkeyz EP coming.
Yeah, there's a few bits and pieces, yeah.
So, Richie, maybe just one more question to wrap up. For a lot of Gorillaz fans, Laika Come Home might be really the only dub album they've ever heard. Where would you recommend they go next if they wanted to kind of get some more experience with that genre?
Well, I would say, in my personal humble opinion, if they want one record, and I'm not going to bother to try and couch this in what I call neo-dub, it's just dub, is Scientist meets the Space Invaders.
Oh, classic.
Great one.
So good.
Scientist is, just fucking essential.
Scientist meets the Space Invaders. Listen to that bastard record. He's probably got a delay and a spring reverb, and it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, go check that out.
Wait till the sun goes down. Listen to it at night. That's what I say.
Yeah. And the first track, Beam Down, is mind-boggling and very Star Trek related.
Yeah, he likes playing around a lot with the sci-fi themes and stuff like that.
He does. He certainly does.
For sure. Well, hey, this was amazing, Richie. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, Richie, it's so cool to have spoken with you.
And keep in touch, and any updates, or I'll give you any little exclusives I can. And if I'm in LA or Oregon, I shall be in touch.
Very cool. Yeah, you're always welcome to come back on the show.
Yeah, we'll expect you back on when that Spacemonkeyz EP drops. Thank you so much, Richie.
Nice to speak to you.
You know what, Trevor? Here on Howlin' Monkeys, we don't just report on Gorillaz news. We make it ourselves.
I know, yeah. It really feels like we are the ones with our hands on the pulse, doesn't it?
But I gotta say, honestly, I am really, especially after spending the week with this album, Laika Come Home, I'm really excited about the idea of an EP from Gava and Desire and Dubversive of all original dub music. That's exciting to me.
Totally. Oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, and the fact that he led right out the gate with that blew my mind. It's like, oh, we're going to be interviewing a space monkey. That's cool. I wonder if he's going to have anything interesting to say. And he comes in with, oh, by the way, new material soon.
So unexpected, because I mean, 2002, Laika Come Home came out, so it's been 15 years since we've heard from the Spacemonkeyz.
Yeah, I mean, people make a big deal about like Gorillaz taking 7 years off, but I mean, come on. Spacemonkeyz going on almost 2 decades.
So with that added context, should we get into our track by track deep dive?
Yeah, why don't we take a look at Laika Come Home?
Here's the main question that I had rattling in my head this week that I wanted to ask you. Does your sort of over time lukewarm feelings about the Gorillaz self-titled, does that put a limit on your ability to kind of enjoy Laika as its own thing?
Not at all, because a lot of these songs, like we talked to Richie, they don't really adhere to the original versions, at least not in structure or form or even usually vocals. A lot of them are just kind of more nebulous, kind of new stuff that kind of exists in the orbit of the self-titled. Yeah,
that's a good way of putting it. And a few key points on the album. They even did a really good job kind of boiling some of those songs down to their essence, just tone-wise, you know what I mean?
Definitely, yeah.
I'm very excited. It's been a while since we've reviewed an album proper. I'm very excited to share our adjectives with each other, Trevor. It's like a...
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, you want to do yours
first? It's like a grand tradition. I'll do mine first. All right. I went with improvisatory, heavy, and nerdy.
Interesting. Why nerdy?
I think the reason that the album is such a successful dub reggae album made by a bunch of white British dudes is that they're all super nerdy about this stuff.
Right. They know their shit.
Exactly. There's the kind of like respect and deep well of knowledge for the history of dub that only a nerd could kind of bring to a project like this.
Okay.
Nerdy, by the way, I mean 100% as a compliment.
Yes, I think that ties into a couple of my words as well, because I brought to the table this week, I've got exploratory,
Great.
authentic,
Awesome.
and sincere.
That's a really good, that's actually probably, if there's a best in show of the 6 adjectives we just laid on the table, I'm giving it to sincere. I think that perfectly describes this project.
Yeah, I mean, we talk so much about remixes that are kind of just feel phoned in or almost like cash-in attempts, but this really feels like there was a lot of love put into it and a lot of respect for both the source material and the kind of influences that they were drawing on to make this new stuff.
Yeah, and it helps the way that Richie kind of laid it out. It helps that each Space Monkey had a deliberate, distinct role, and one that almost corresponds to like a traditional band setup. You know, you've got your instrumental melodic side, you've got your percussive bass and drum side, and you've got kind of your front man who's guiding the project. I think that also contributes to these songs feeling like more than just simple remixes, you know?
Yeah, I was surprised to learn how traditionally, I guess, band-oriented the making of this album turned out to be.
Should we get right into the track by track, Trevor?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
We got first up Jungle Fresh, which is the remix of 192000. I'm going to throw in kind of a big dump of credits here, Trevor, because a lot of them are consistent throughout the tracks. But
let's get them out there.
Here and throughout, horns, of course, are arranged by Mike Smith, the incomparable Mike Smith. Here and throughout, we've got percussion by Jeff Scantleberry. And this is, of course, the song, Trevor, with the castanets by Jack Scheidt.
Of course, yeah. So this, like we talked about, this was kind of the first one they did, and this feels very like proof of concept.
Yes,
if you know what I mean.
And there's actually some misinformation floating around because the internet seems to claim often that Banyana Baby, the Tomorrow Comes Today one, was the original demo, and I'm glad that Richie was able to kind of correct the record on that.
Me too, yeah. I mean, I imagine that knowledge just goes around because that was the first one officially released.
You know, Mike Smith, I think, should really be credited as the fourth Space Monkey because his horns are on pretty much every track, and
frequently some of my favorite parts of the songs as well.
Yeah, he does some really creative stuff. Like, I love how he interpolates the first call fanfare in this one.
Yeah.
That's like really fun and playful. Yeah, I think I mentioned this on a previous episode, Trevor, but I have like nostalgic associations with this one because you could play the original version of it, the Darren solo, I believe, production of it, by going into Murdoch's Trans Am and pushing it into the 8-track player.
Right, I wasn't around for that kind of stuff, but you said that this makes you feel nostalgic about it, yeah?
Yeah, and I think part of it is just that, like, I'm an only child, and it distinctly gave me the feeling that I was, like, smoking weed in my cool older brother's car, listening to a dub reggae tape that he had, you know?
Right, everybody needs those moments, right?
This is actually, because of that and because I think it's really effective, even though it's like one of the more straightforward cuts on the record, I do consider this in my top 3. I like the vibe of it. It's got like nighttime vibes, but it's also very colorful and chromatic and fun, you know?
I like the vibes on this one too. I don't love the slowed down vocals. Those kind of kill it for me.
I don't know. It's also got a really good bass line.
Yeah, I mean, everything instrumentally I love going on here. The vocals just sound a little too processed and kind of worked on for me to really get down with that.
Yeah, I could feel that. You know, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
I think 192000 would have sucked as an album opener for the self-titled, but this version of it is a really good opener for Laika Come Home.
Yeah, it just lets you know what you're in for.
You want to move into Strictly Rub-a-Dub, the slow country remix?
Slow country remix. This one is absolutely sublime. My number 1 on the record.
This is my number 2 on the record, so already we've got 2 of my top 3.
It's all downhill from here.
The credit that we must talk about is Hugh Brown, because boy, what an amazing performance.
He absolutely kills it toasting on this track.
So good. And like you could just visualize it the way Richie was explaining it, with him sort of standing in that doorway, just improvising that toast and then being like, "Oh God, get him on the mic right now."
Yeah, I love that. I love that that low pitched kind of squelchy synth part that he said is like in sevenths or something.
Yeah, it's like what is it, 7 bars instead of 8 or something, or 7 measures? I can't remember exactly how it breaks down. It is a weird, it's like a very weird off kilter Vamp, but he just fits over it beautifully.
And the guitars are great, and the horn swells here are fantastic.
And then here and throughout, we've got really good bass work from Phil Soul, who I believe works with Richie on what Richard refers to as his day job, playing for the Boy George band Culture Club. I believe Phil Soul is also a Culture Club guy.
This one's just, it's so good, this one. It really feels like a natural extension of the song. Like, I would almost love to see, like, the Gorillaz live band play Slow Country and then maybe go into, like, a minute of this at the end.
That'd be sick. And especially if they could get you Brown out there, that'd be amazing.
Imagine.
One of my favorite moments, too, is, like, really early on when they drop that little City Life. Like, they very sparingly use Damon in this, but they drop that City Life, and then there's a little bit of, like, dead space, and then this assault of, like, this Spectre-esque wall of horns just comes in, like,
so good.
So good.
I love when they just drop in the A and it's like got all this vocal like echo on it.
Isn't that great? I love this song.
This is really good.
Let's talk about what a lot of people consider to be their favorite on this record, maybe not me included, but Banyana Baby, the Tomorrow Comes Today remix.
Yeah, this isn't among my favorites. I mean, I actually enjoyed it a lot more this time around than I remember liking it back when I would listen to this album more frequently. It almost sounds like it could have been on like the second Massive Attack album, Protection, which I think makes a lot of sense.
It does have that kind of trip-hoppy vibe. Like the synth that it's built around is very metronome-ish in a way, you know?
Right.
It's got like a low stomp to it. It just doesn't exactly go anywhere that gets me too excited. But this is the first appearance of Stuart Zender, the original bassist of Jamiroquai. I believe he's trading off actually between Paul Soul and Stuart Zender bass lines on this song, Trevor. And apparently Earl 16 is doing some vocals on here, but I listened to this song all week. I could not tell you where Earl 16 is on this song.
Yeah, I wouldn't really be able to point that out. This one's pretty cool though. It really like amps up the late night vibe. Like if Tomorrow Comes Today takes place at like 11 p.m., this one is like 2 a.m.
I feel like it does successfully set a mood. I just wish it had a bit more going on, or maybe a second half with a gear shift in it, you know?
Yeah, this is one of the ones where I wish it used a little more from the original song, like a little more of Damon's vocals. Because like I said, if it did, it would basically just be a really, really good Massive Attack song.
Or even just whatever Earl 16 was doing, you could have put more of that in there.
Yeah, throw that in.
But let's get on to a highlight from this record for sure, which is Monkey Racket, the remix of Man Research.
This one is an absolute jam. Number 2 on the album for me.
It's not in my top 3, but it's definitely in my top 5. It's either number 4 or number 5 in my top 5. But Stuart Zender is back, not only playing bass, but also a clavinet, which is like a really cool electric clavichord, you know?
And it sounds great on that. Like, it sounds great in this one. Yeah, I mean, and the bass is so heavy. It's just, yeah, this one's like a monster. The yeah, yeah, yeahs are like deployed absolutely perfectly as well. Let
me tell you something about Laika Come Home for you people listening. Take your fucking earbuds out and go find a decent set of speakers, because there's a lot of sub bass on this record, and God forbid you listen to an album, you know, ambiently on some speakers with a subwoofer, but this album will come alive if you do that.
Yeah, it's a very deep listen.
And I love the beat switch. You've got like the stomp during the melodica section, and then during the yeah, yeah, yeahs, it goes into like a dance hall, like dun, 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 dun.
Love it.
That's so good.
The melodica here is great too.
There's also some really subtle and like almost like textural scratch work from Darren on here from Desire. He has a very different approach as a turntablist to Kid Koala. Like Kid Koala is very much like, this is the sample, I'm right up in your face with it. I'm practically performing a guitar solo on this tape deck right now, whereas Darren is much more interested in just kind of filling in sounds with his scratching, you know?
Atmospherics, a more atmospheric approach maybe.
This is a perfect example of what I was talking about, Trevor, where like the mood of the original track, even though it's totally transformed, is really preserved and maybe even like highlighted.
It really comes through. I totally agree.
Yeah, it's like trance-like, sweaty energy, you know? Let's talk about Depunked.
Depunked, the punk mix. What do you think about the vibe on this one? Does this one also translate from the original for you?
No, no, it doesn't. I feel like...
I think it feels like a sequel in a good way.
I wanted to talk to you about this song a little bit. Like, what is the thesis statement of the album, and is this song cheating? Like, is there enough from punk for this to actually be like a reimagining of that song?
Well, I think this one does kind of push the envelope a little bit, doesn't it? But I mean, you got Damon saying "shut up."
That's true. He is in there.
and I don't know. I like thinking of this as kind of like a sequel or kind of a different side of punk. It's kind of got the same like attitude, but just a lot sleepier.
I could kind of see that. There's some really pretty vibraphone on this.
And the horns are great.
I'm glad that this is on here, but sort of like Richie was saying in the interview, like they would have had to do the same thing to say, you know, Rock the House or Latin Simone, and I'm glad that they just kind of kept it to this one, you know?
Right.
For the total, like, radical, we only used 10% of the original source material cuts on the record.
Hey, I have a discussion question for you.
Let's hear it.
All right, so the three ones that they didn't attempt to remix were Rock the House, Latin Simone, and Double Bass. If you could have a Space Monkified version of any of those three, which would you pick?
You know, even though he called it cheesy, I would really love to see what they would do with that Abraham Farrer vocal and
that would be cool,
Latin
wouldn't
Simone.
it? I would really be interested in seeing them flip Double Bass. I think that would be really cool. I think that has a lot of potential, actually.
I think that would have been really doable. You can almost kind of hear the plink plinks in Double Bass if you drop them in your head, you know?
Easy.
Don't get me wrong. I do think that there's a high likelihood that Latin Simone Space Monkified would definitely sound corny and ridiculous. I just think it would be fun to hear.
Yeah, I trust they could have made it work.
You want to talk about P45, the 5/4 remix?
Sure. Now, a P45, I believe that's like an unemployment slip or something.
Yeah, I guess the way it is if you get fired or if you quit in the UK, you get a P45. So then vernacularly, you could say, I took my P45 or I asked for my P45, which means I quit, or I was given my P45, which means I was fired.
Okay.
There's an intro beat here, Trevor. I do like how some of these songs have like distinct little intro, outro mini sections to them, you know?
Yeah, little just kind of snippets of other stuff tacked on at the end. I like those a lot too.
This one's really fun because the beat like really reminds me of Jumpin' by Destiny's Child. It's got that kind of like stop-start, you know, club thing.
It's kind of like a little piano and guitar-driven tune.
It's sort of slightly more interpretive of 5/4 than D-Punk was of punk, but it's still like one of the bigger stretches on the album, I think. Like it's.
But again, Damon's vocals sound great on this one.
I would say though that like if you compare this to say Rub-a-Dub or Monkey Racket, like two of the songs that have similar vibes on this record, it doesn't quite stand up to either of those. Like this is like a good solid mid-album cut for me, but it doesn't necessarily, you know, explode into this really memorable highlight.
No, yeah, it's just a kind of a little more breezier pace setting kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And then like at 3:40, there's a really good lively, like fun horn track in it that's kind of like it's really fun.
And it does kind of like a call and response thing with the vocals almost at some points, which I like a lot.
What we should do is we should get Jenny Beth to sing on this one.
That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I'd enjoy that.
I could see Jenny Beth like doing a weird two-tone solo album or something, you know?
Totally. But next we've got a Dub 09.
Yeah, which I read somewhere is pronounced Dub Space 9. I don't know why that would be true.
Huh, I don't know. But this is really high up there for me. I think this is probably my second favorite on the record with the Man Research one rounding at the top three. But yeah, this one's great.
This is the first one that Richie did work on, I believe, right?
He killed this one because honestly, I might prefer this to the original song.
They're both really good, but the one thing that I do love over the original in this is that towards the end, you've got that really cool little organ vamp, and then that really, really aggressive snare that starts coming in. That really super delayed snare that starts coming in is so good.
What is the part like halfway through the song comes in and keeps going like bum bum bum? Is that like a synth or?
Yeah, it sounded almost like it might have been a sample, but I'm not totally sure. I know what you're talking about though.
It sounds very like spaghetti western. Like when I hear that part, I imagine like I'm a cowboy who's just been shot by another cowboy, and it's like in slow motion, and maybe my shot hit him too, like at the same time.
I almost wonder if that might just be Gava with a really heavily affected guitar even.
Maybe, yeah. But I love this one. I think it retains everything that's good about the actual song while leaning even harder into what made that song good in the first place. And throwing in some like really cool new elements too.
And it stands to reason because obviously Starshine was already one of the more like Caribbean influenced tracks on the original. So like
yeah.
It would make sense that translation would be pretty easy.
The next one I think is a pretty easy translation too.
Yeah, Crooked Dub, the remix of Soundcheck Gravity. This is, of course, features Trevor strings by the elusive Brian Piss.
Great, of course. I actually might prefer this one to the original, too. It kind of focuses more on the parts of Gravity that I like, and I like those parts a lot. And it kind of replaces the parts I don't like with something that kind of complements the good parts a little better.
It certainly lifts an awful lot from the original track, probably more than any of the other, just in terms of like actual instrumentation and stuff. Like, I'd say structurally, instrumentally, vocally, probably like 70% of Soundcheck is here. But if the whole album was kind of like this, I feel like the album would be kind of slight for it. But I'm glad that this one track is on here as like, here's one direction we could have taken this thing, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad. It's nice to get such a good reworking of a song that like I don't really enjoy too much on the original album.
Also, Madman does some really good beat programming because he has the classic disco pew 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 drums in there, like which sound like they wouldn't work for like a dubby down-tempo track, but it really works. Really cool.
Yeah.
The bass line here doesn't really mutate much at all, and it doesn't really deviate very far from the original Left Hand Dan, Junior Dan bass line, you know?
Right.
Which I think would be fine, except for a lot of that bass line is very repetitive, and we do drone on it for about the last minute and a half of the song, which is a little bit of a meh section of the song for me, but
yeah, I mean, much like the original Gravity, this one could definitely have been shorter.
Yeah, for sure. Probably not quite as shorter as the original Gravity could have been, though.
What is it about this song that just people listen to and go, yeah, I think this needs to be almost 6 minutes long?
It needed like a rapper. It could have used an actual rapper. The original anyway.
Something. Next, though, we've got Mutant Genius, the remix of New Genius, which is kind of the most conventional thing on this album, I think.
I love the weird intro, though. There's this really weird intro. So you've got like these beeps in the right channel that almost sound like they're from like a respirator or some kind of medical equipment, and then there's like weird swirling ghostly noises on the left channel, and then there's super filtered like low pass organ. Like it's one of the weirdest little sonic pictures on the record, just in the intro of the song. I love it so much.
And then it morphs into this kind of like a slightly higher tempo, more like electrified version of New Genius, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of grounded around this like hip hop drum pattern that definitely works for it.
Yeah, it really carries Damon's vocals very well.
And there's some really interesting trade-offs happening between like guitar and bass and organ. Like I almost wish that there was a little bit less Damon here, because sometimes I feel like he gets in the way of some really interesting stuff happening in the instrumentation.
Yeah, it's interesting because, this is one of the more traditional ones, but it also kind of ends up making it one of the less interesting ones, I think.
Yeah, although I do love the choice to use his sort of outro ad-libs, but put that like flanger effect over it, because that's just very funny and interesting sounding.
They do a lot of cool stuff to his voice in this one. I love when it goes very high-pitched.
And I also like that Darren almost doubles up on the Kid Koala scratch solo, but like does his own take on it in a very,
good scratching on this one, definitely.
Very good. And I love the false ending too, where the song ends, but then the groove fades back in. That's a real music nerd move to throw something in like that, you know?
False endings are always fun, yeah.
Let's talk about Come Again, the remix of Rehash.
This one's really nice. It feels almost like celebratory at times, which is like a rewarding change after getting through all like the stretch of darker songs we just went through.
This was the revelation of the last week for me. Like, I had forgotten about this remix and I was so into it. Right now, this stands at number 1 on the album for me. I love this song.
Nice. I love how it uses the backing vocals.
I love when he just drops in David going, drugs, don't wanna stop. Almost like he used those stems to just like make a David Albarn soundboard or something.
Yeah.
What an amazing bass line. One of my favorite bass lines on this album. Like, kudos to Phil Soul. This is such a good bass line.
And I really like hearing that on acoustic guitar so isolated. It sounds very kind of like intimate and raw.
It does. Also amazing work from Gava on this song, because I think melodically, like, just the chord progression is so interesting and weird, and like the stings, the little piano stings are playing these like really jazzy diminished chords, which is so cool. There's a great horn line from Mike. I mean, I think I hear a theremin back there in the mix at one point, which is awesome. Like, this is just so cool.
Which is cool because the original Rehash uses a lot of like weird left field instruments too.
Definitely. This is another example of like really recapturing the same energy but going in a different direction as the original, you know?
I will say that this one does, out of all these tracks, this one does one of the best jobs of doing that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I love this song. Come Again. What a revelation, revisiting this album. It's got another fun little like random outro beat, like this little hip-hop thing that sounds like it might be sampling Damon's ad-lib from Slow Country, maybe. I'm not sure. Could it kind of use as a transition between Come Again and the next song, Fistful of Peanuts, the Clint Eastwood remix.
I love that title. Don't you love that title?
Fistful of Peanuts, like, I don't know if we've really highlighted the title game on this record, but there's some good ones. Fistful of Peanuts is right up there because obviously Fistful of Dollars or Fistful of Dynamite, depending on which one you want to talk about, is a spaghetti western classic featuring Clint Eastwood. So that's the monkey-fied version of that title.
Yeah, my favorite thing here is the bass. Like, this bass line will occasionally just get stuck in my head. Like, for no reason. Definitely.
And it's still, I would say that I preferred Hugh Brown's vocals on Rub-a-Dub to Fistful. Like, I think Rub-a-Dub gets the edge on this one for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's a little more up in that one, where he's kind of down in this one.
But he does have a really good, the outro I think is a highlight where he's like, Spacemonkeyz gonna rise up.
Yes, definitely.
Let's get together and be wise. Yeah. So good.
It's interesting to put the Clint Eastwood remix so late in the game on this album too.
Yeah, really cool. And this is another example of that Desire marching order of like, let's not try to remake the single, let's do our own thing. Also, Mike Smith plays the fucking flute on this song. Somebody should call the police on him.
Somebody should call the police. What do you think it would have been? I think it would have been interesting to hear how they would have chosen to kind of incorporate Dell on this track. It was interesting, like, that they didn't do that at all.
Yeah, or maybe to grab a Jamaican rapper or something would have been cool too.
Ooh, yeah, that would have been neat.
But yeah, I thought about that too, about how I wouldn't have mind seeing some of the rap pulled in on this remix, but it might have been kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then we've got some motoring. We've got some boom boom of an engine to announce the arrival of the album's proper closer, Lil Dub Cheffin.
The M1A remix. I've had to listen to M1A1 so many times for this fucking show.
I know, and I've been very curious about all week about this because I know M1A1 is your least favorite Gorillaz song, and Lil Dub Cheffin is often cited as the standout track on this album, so I'm very curious to see your thoughts on Lil Dub Cheffin.
I have a very interesting relationship with the song, and I think I figured out why after all the stuff we've talked about. This is a weird event horizon for the Spacemonkeyz project, I think, and maybe for Gorillaz as a whole. Okay,
sure.
This is the moment where Spacemonkeyz crosses over from being like an interesting oddity in the catalog to like a bizarre curiosity.
Right.
Because we should say this song has lead vocals from Terry Hall of The Specials.
Yes, formerly Don't Call Me Scarface, now the Yob voice of doom.
Right. Here is the biggest influence on the musical side of this phase of the project. And I know the band plays that off as a joke, but it's true.
It's for sure true.
Actually showing up on a remix album that the band itself is only kind of tangentially related to, singing a song that is about that band, and finishing with a shout out to the dudes doing the remix album.
Very weird. It's such an Ouroboros moment of a snake consuming its own tail.
Yeah, there's a real beyond the looking glass moment here. I think Laika Come Home is worth the price of admission, if for nothing else than hear Terry Hall sing Spacemonkeyz Say Want Some.
It's so interesting because so much effort is tried to be made to paint 2D and also by extension Damon Albarn, or perhaps vice versa, as the world's biggest Terry Hall or Specials fan. Mm-hmm. But it definitely seems like Terry Hall is sitting by the phone and waiting to show up. If you want him to show up for your dumb BBC documentary and say, I'm the biggest influence, he'll show up. If you want him to sing a little outro on your weird non-album single that comes out and does nothing, he'll show up. If you need him to come sing vocals on the remix album of your big hit album, Terry Hall is game. I mean, it could be that Terry Hall is just as big of a Damon fan as Damon is a Terry Hall fan.
So that begs the question, where is he on the actual album itself?
Good question, Trevor. Nowhere.
It's like he showed up to the party a day late.
Yeah.
And they just let him do some stuff.
He's on the outside of the margins of that album, just banging on it, trying to get in. Even what's the song that actually samples the Specials again?
Slow Country.
Yeah, let that sample play for 3 seconds longer. You got Terry Hall on the original, but alas, it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I like Lil Dub Cheffin a lot.
Yeah, and apparently that title is a reference to a chain of eateries that are found on motorways in the UK called Little Chef. We've also got Oregon on here by Simon Katz. He's another Jamiroquai guy. I love the horns behind the La 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 Hey. They're so beautiful. they almost carry those La 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 Hays into their own new melody. Like you kind of interpolate the two together.
Yeah, I think these are the arrangements that a song like M1A1 kind of deserves. I think like the potential is kind of wasted on the kind of garage rock of the original version.
Well, it certainly like defiantly throws out any rock star posturing that the original might have had. They had no use for Damon's scream.
You mean Noodles?
Yeah, Noodle. Sorry, canonically Noodle scream. Obviously, it's clear to see why this is the track that they push from this record. I feel it's like a good foot forward for everything that's great about Laika Come Home. It's not just misses the cutoff of my top 3, but it's right there bubbling under. I think it's an absolute highlight. What a good song.
For sure. It's definitely, I think, the most special moment on the album.
And I mean, even if you, M1A1, whatever the opposite of a superfan is, you know, if you can be charmed over by a little dub shop, and it must have some secret dub energy, some real power.
Yeah, it's something like that.
And so we've arrived at the end of Laika Come Home, an oddity, not only in the Gorillaz catalog, but in music as a whole, a full album remix, something that I wish they would attempt again, or other bands would attempt even.
Yeah, it would have been really interesting to see Spacemonkeyz versions of Demon Days and Plastic Beach, and I can't even imagine Humans.
Yeah, well, especially because they seem game to kind of switch up, you know, not just be dub reggae necessarily. They change things up every time, you know.
Yeah.
I guess that takes us to the end of the show, Trevor.
Yeah.
Wow, what a massive episode this was.
Yeah, do you want to read your long list of stuff that you always read at the end?
Of course. I'd love for you listening at home to connect with us. You can do that on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, YouTube, Instagram, Amino. You can send us an email to hallelujahmonkeys@gmail.com. You could write us a review on iTunes. That's really helpful. We always love that. Join our Discord server at discord.me/monkeys with a Z. And also special thanks, by the way, to Discord users Hunts and Jasper, who were good resources coming up with questions for this amazing interview we had this episode. Thanks, guys. You were really helpful.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah.
And be sure to, if you feel like it, become a supporter on Patreon with a monthly donation. And thanks so much to those of you who are continuing to pledge donations to the show. Very helpful. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. So, Dylan, now that we're in an official new season of Hallelujah Monkeys, I think we're going to go back to using contextual sign-offs rather than the Murdoch Satan Loves You, which I think we'll save for special occasions now, mainly because I can't go another week with I Want to Marry a Lighthouse Keeper stuck in my head. I don't know about you.
It's probably a good call.
Yeah, so this has been Hallelujah Monkeys. I've been Trevor Ickrath.
I've been Dylan Flynn.
And until next week, don't get lost in heaven.
Demo.